Hey guys, it's Rachel and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I share content for international students who are looking to study or immigrate to Canada. A few weeks ago, I tackled reasons on why you should study here in 2022. Hopefully that video provided convincing reasons for you to come here. But today, let's talk about a very important topic that can better prepare you on this journey: money and finances. As most of you already know, funding is a very huge factor in mapping out your plan to study in Canada. And that begs the question, just how much do you need to study in Canada? This video hopes to answer all of those questions surrounding this topic. So if you're looking to get down to the nitty-gritty of expenses, then keep on watching. Now before we start, let me give you a breakdown of what I'll discuss. First off, I'll be outlining the costs of the following: school fees, study permit application fees, and the cost of living here. All of the prices shown will be in Canadian dollars. Second, keep in mind that the numbers are estimates. Some fees are fixed, meaning it applies to everyone, but there are some fees that will vary depending on your circumstances. My main goal here is to make you aware of the possible expenses that you may incur in the process. In short, the prices shown may not necessarily apply to you, so take it with a grain of salt. Finally, to better understand the values you will see, I've accounted for the cost of study here for 1 year. This scope is based on the assumption that this would be the immediate costs you'll encounter as you start on this. So if you're taking a 2-year program or a bachelor's degree, certain adjustments would be made. Okay, now that that's done, let's kick off this video starting with the first thing that you need to account for, which are your school fees. Okay, so in order to study in Canada, you need to be accepted into a designated learning institution. That said, you'll need to prepare for the following. First is a language proficiency test. Most schools may require this, but there are some institutions that won't require it. You can consider taking the academic IELTS test, which is widely accepted, and that costs 330 Canadian dollars. Your IELTS results can come in handy, not just for school applications, but if you're also applying for the student direct stream, which I'll talk about in a future video. But if you want an affordable option, then you can go for the Duolingo test. At 62 Canadian dollars, it is relatively cheaper than the IELTS, and results come in faster in just 2 days. However, you would have to check with your chosen school if they accept Duolingo as proof of English proficiency. But on a very unrelated note, have you seen their TikTok? I need to talk to their social media manager and tell them they're nailing it. Next, allot at least 50 Canadian dollars as allowance for getting school-related documents. This amount can account for expenses incurred in retrieving academic transcripts, certificates, medium of instruction letters, and the like. Next are your school application fees. There are fees to submit applications to schools and programs that you want to apply to. The average price is 125 Canadian dollars, but it can go up to 200 CAD. However, there are some schools that do waive the application fee, which means you can apply for free. But remember, you are paying for each school application. Meaning if you're applying to more than one school or even one school but multiple programs, then the cost will go up. Now, after submitting your applications, you may be lucky enough to get a letter of offer. At this point, you may be required to pay for a security deposit to guarantee your spot. The fee will depend on the school, but on average, they may ask you to pay an amount that covers your first term of tuition fees. Though the costs seem hefty, don't worry, because the amount you'll pay will be deducted from the total amount of your tuition fees. Which brings us to this, the big boss level. Now, you'll be asked to settle your tuition fees, which may or may not take a beating on your wallet. So, what is the average cost of tuition for international students? Well, according to StatCan, in 2021, the median annual tuition for undergraduate studies can cost up to 33,000 Canadian dollars, whereas for postgraduate studies, it can reach approximately 20 grand. Now, I know it's expensive and definitely not for the faint-hearted. And as much as I am an advocate for studying in Canada, if these numbers don't add up to what you have right now, best to figure out the perfect time to pursue this. And I'm telling you this because I want you to be ready for all costs so that you don't encounter problems as you go along. Okay, now that we've covered the education aspect of finances, let's now move on to the immigration side of things. Once you've settled all the school fees and have received your official letter of acceptance, you'll now need to apply for a study permit to enter Canada. And obviously, that ain't free. So here's what it's going to look like. 150 Canadian dollars for the application fees, $85 for biometrics, $300 for medical exam fees. If required, you'll also need to pay to get a police certificate, and the cost varies from country to country. For example, in the Philippines, it roughly costs 5 Canadian dollars for the NBI clearance. So, in total, expect to shell out at least 540 Canadian dollars for your study permit application. This price excludes family members accompanying you to Canada. So if you are bringing family with you, it'll cost more. Now, this price also excludes legal fees. So if you require help from an immigration lawyer or immigration consultant, then expect at least $1,500 for legal assistance. If you can DIY your application like I did, then good for you. But I just want to be clear that while I am an advocate for DIY, if your application has some complexities, then it may be worth considering investing more and getting an authorized representative to help strengthen your case. Next up, let's talk about the pre-departure expenses. Assuming that all goes well and your study permit gets approved, you'll now need to prepare for your departure to Canada. And surprise, surprise, there's added costs there too. This includes your airfare and medical insurance. As an example, $800 is the airfare cost for a one-way ticket from Manila to Vancouver. And I've also spent $180 for medical coverage that covers my first 3 months in Canada using GuardMe, which is a popular medical insurance plan here. Now, finally, when you arrive, you'll need to shoulder your day-to-day expenses living in Canada. Now, this is where things get a bit more challenging. Guys, it's really hard to give an accurate number since there are so many variables that we would need to account for to gauge your living expenses here. One example is location. It's more expensive to live in cities like Vancouver and Toronto as opposed to Nova Scotia or Manitoba. And this can be due to a number of reasons, including its urban setting, abundance in job opportunities, booming business and economic activities, and access to transportation and amenities. Another factor is lifestyle. Depending on how frugal you want to be, you can lower your living expenses. For example, you can choose to live further out as opposed to living in or near the downtown area. You can also opt for public transportation versus purchasing a car. Or you can make room for groceries as opposed to dining out. Basically, my main point is, depending on how you want to live your life in Canada, there will be associated costs. But for the purpose of giving you a number to serve as your guide, I'll use what an average student living in Vancouver will look like. I'll use Vancouver as my point of reference because if you can live here, then you can probably live in any other Canadian city or province. So here's the breakdown. I allotted $1,400 for a 2-week hotel or Airbnb stay, and this is enough time to help you look for a permanent place to rent. Speaking of rent, this is where most of your expenditure lies. Average rent for an unfurnished 1-bedroom apartment in the Metro Vancouver area is $1,500 to $1,700 per month. But you can definitely get away with less. Then you have transportation. Most students use public transit by taking the bus or train, and with that, expect to pay $131 for a 2-zone monthly pass to get around the city. In British Columbia, we have the MSP, or Medical Services Plan, and it is mandatory for international students to pay 75 Canadian dollars per month for medical coverage. Groceries is also a necessary expense, and I would say that $500 is a safe amount to allocate for groceries. Then you'll need to pay for your phone and cellular data. And Canada is notoriously known for having expensive phone plans. If you bring your own device, you can expect to pay 45 Canadian dollars per month for your plan, and that includes unlimited calls and texts with 10 gigabytes worth of data. I prefer to have data as it's extremely helpful for me to use the internet while getting around a new city. Finally, I've allotted 300 Canadian dollars for miscellaneous fees, which can account for shopping, entertainment, school supplies, and other unexpected costs. So, in your first year of living in Vancouver, the cost comes up to 32,072 Canadian dollars. Sheesh! Now, to add insult to injury, let's tally up the total cost for each category. So here's an overview of the costs you'll need that covers the school application fees up until the cost of living in Canada for the first year. So if you're taking undergrad studies in Vancouver and are hoping to DIY your immigration application, then expect to pay a whopping 67,795 Canadian dollars. Or if you're taking postgrad studies and everything else remains constant, then expect to pay 54,292 Canadian dollars. This is not for the faint of heart. Kidding aside, I'm just trying to give you guys a good projection. That way you don't get shocked when pursuing studies in Canada. But as intimidating as the number looks, there are ways that we can reduce the cost. And I'll name a few tips. First, choose affordable programs. I've made a couple videos covering affordable schools, which you can find here for your reference. But just be careful. Some schools will have lower tuition fees, and while that is an attractive option, it usually comes with hidden costs. So research, and find out the best options based on your circumstances. Second, scout for rent options that fit your budget. If you want to save 50% on rent costs, consider shared accommodations or living with relatives, family, or friends, or even living further out of a popular city. For example, instead of living in Vancouver, consider living in Burnaby, Coquitlam, Surrey, or Richmond. Third, be mindful of your personal expenses. Living in a new country can be exciting, but can cost you a premium. If you can afford the conveniences, then great. But if you would rather save money for future plans, find workarounds in terms of your lifestyle. But also, on the flip side, while it is important to save, if it will affect your physical or mental well-being, then give it a second thought. Because if it costs you your peace, then it's too expensive. Lastly, consider looking for a part-time job. Earning money is another way to pay off your living expenses. And fortunately, international students are allowed to work 20 hours per week off campus and work longer hours during scheduled academic breaks and on-campus work. But just make sure to abide by your study permit conditions and avoid working under the table or engaging in questionable activities just to earn money. It's not worth it, guys. It's not. So if you've reached the end of this video, give yourself a pat on the back for making it till the very end. Thank you. Seriously though, when it comes to money and finances, there's a lot to take into consideration. My intention is to help you better prepare because honestly, guys, I learned it the hard way, which is why I hope my insights and experiences can shed light on how much you actually need to study in Canada. At the end of the day, as much as I hate saying this, money matters, and it's just how the world works. So if you're looking to study in Canada, best to have your wallets prepared, but I'm pretty sure that your investments will pay off one way or another. Anyway, that's it. That's all I have for today. If you found this video helpful, it would really mean a lot to me if you could subscribe, like this video, and leave a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. Be safe and be kind. And as always, I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.